world. Are you teacher James? Whoa. Unbelievable. Singapore, just last couple weeks ago. I had more money to expend on the purchase of a new car. And I also rented an apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment. Really? Yes. Where was it? It was in the new condominium in the center of town, and signed a 2-year lease. I agreed to rent the apartment or the condominium for 2 years, and I signed my name and dated it on the lease. Rented an apartment in a place called a condominium, where each apartment is owned by someone. Somebody may own 1 apartment in the condominium, they may own 3 apartments in the condominium. But when I went to the condominium, I was not going to buy an apartment, a condo. I was going to rent one. So I found the owner of an apartment, a condominium apartment on the 8th floor. I called the owner and said, I would like to rent your apartment. He said, fine, it's available right now. I said, good, I'll take it for 2 years. So I went to his office and I signed the lease, agreeing to pay the rent every month and take care of the apartment for 2 years. Rented an apartment in a new condominium. Where was it? In the center of town. How long are you going to stay there? Oh, and I signed a 2-year lease, an agreement to rent the apartment. Salary, your income for your job, the money you make at your job, your salary. And in this case, mine was raised. Are there any questions about this? Yeah. No question? Or?
And apartment in the new condominium. What does it mean? In a condominium.
What is a condominium?
And condominium, a big an apartment
The condominium. Each one of the windows, let's say, is an apartment. It's a 2-bedroom apartment owned by Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, Miss D, Miss E, and Mr. H. They own the apartments. I wanted to live in this building, but I didn't have the money to buy an apartment in the condominium. So I approached Mr. B and said, sir, is your apartment available for rent? He says, yes, it is. It's empty right now. Would you like to rent it? I said, yes, I would. Well, for how long? 2 years. You've got it. There'll be this much money each month for 2 years. Are you willing to sign a lease? Yes, sir. I'll sign the lease immediately. He brought it out, I signed it, and I started to move in the next day into apartment B in the condominium building.
Can you use a room?
In my apartment, there were 2 bedrooms, 1 living room and 1 kitchen and 2 baths. bathrooms. Room, 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 room.
in one apartment.
In one apartment, you can find several rooms. A bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, a kitchen, whatever. It depends on how big the apartment is. You can have 2 bedrooms or 3, or 2 bedrooms and a den. Any other questions about this?
Thank you.
Teacher, the house and condominium different.
The what?
The house and condominium different.
Oh yeah, a house implies a separate single building where if this is a condominium, you know, this might be a house on a street, and you may have many houses down the way. A condominium is, in a sense, an apartment building where each unit, or each apartment, is privately owned. You can rent it if the owner agrees to have you move in while he's living in a house someplace.
And I also rented apartment in a new condominium. What does mean apartment in a new condominium? What does mean?
So, the condominium was just built. It's brand new. It's only 6 months old. So, it's a new condominium. Mr. A, B, Mr. C, Mr. D, Miss E, and Mr. H all bought individual units or apartments in the condominium, where each person is an owner. Together own the apartment. But you don't, Mr. A and Mr. B, they don't live in the apartments they bought. They live in a house 6 miles away. But they rent the apartments. They don't sit empty because they're not there. No, they go out and they rent the apartment. And so in this case, the fellow that got the raise, he went to see Mr. B and said, I'd like to rent the apartment in that condominium. Oh, he said, that's apartment 2C. Perfect. It's got a view of the river. Great, I'll take it. So I will rent your condominium apartment for 2 years. So within the big condominium building, there are units, and they're called apartments. They are part of the condominium. The condominium units are owned by individuals, and sometimes they're rented. Now, in a condominium here, D, Unit D, Mr. D and his family may be living there. But Mr. A and B, they live someplace else. They just own the units and they rent them, boom, 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 boom. Any other questions about this?
2 years. 2 years.
No S ใช่ไหม
2 years. No S.
2-year lease.
No S.
2-year lease.
Yearly or okay.
A lease is an agreement that you have signed with the owner, in this case, to live in the apartment for a certain amount of time, 2 years, and to pay the rent each month, and to take care of the apartment. Don't break the windows and tear down the doors. No, you have to take care of it, and you have to pay the rent. And as long as you do that, you've agreed and you've satisfied the lease, the agreement to rent the apartment.
Teacher, 2 years. S.
No.
No.
Lease. Yearly.
That's okay, let her sit down. Okay, just take it easy. Okay. Take it easy, take a deep breath, count to 10, and relax.
Please explain why no S. Please explain why no S.
It's very easy explanation. To put an S on it is totally wrong. A 1-year lease, a 2-year lease, a 3-year lease, a 50-year lease.
ไม่มี S.
You could put an S on it and say a 2-year lease, and everybody, whoa, what's the problem? What's her problem? 2 years lease. Well, they would understand what you meant, but they'd wonder where you're coming from.
When I was a child, when we was a child,
When we was a child,
we were a child.
when we were children,
When we were a student, we were a student.
yes,
Teacher taught us
uh-huh.
2 years, 3 years. You know? Okay.
Sure. How long are you going to are you going to stay? I'm going to stay 2 years. How long did you sign the lease? Oh, I signed a 2-year lease. Different.
Different.
Sorry about that. 2-year lease.